Alright, I think I got this figured out now. How's my audio? Do I have audio? How's my audio? Do I have audio? Alright, that's working. How's my audio? Do I have audio? Alright, that's working. Alright, so tonight we are going to be kicking off the Living on Cripple Mountain live series. So if you guys are showing up while I'm trying to share this link out, just give me a few minutes and I'll be right with you. And hey, share the link out yourself so that your friends can see this and maybe they can come in and get involved too. I actually don't have too much of a lag going on. Jefferson, Rich Crabtree, how you guys doing? I'm just trying to get my links shared out and we can get this all kicked off here. I'm not doing too bad, Rich. I went on a solo canoe trip a few days, or a solo kayaking trip a few days ago, and I had a pretty hard fall down a small rock face and had my kayak land on top of me, and it put my hip down for 2 days. But yeah, today I've been up and moving around. It's not been too bad. If you guys get any kind of buffering or anything like that, give me some feedback, please. Our internet's been a little slow today, and I kind of want this to go as smooth as it can. Stream's current bit rate. Well, I had it set at that, so I don't know. Come on now, work with me here. Tonight's going to be the prologue, guys. We're going to be talking about what we're going to be doing with this live stream series and excuse me, possibly going over the contents of the like a Mountain Man's pack and Free Trappers pack. Alright, so that's as out as I can get it now. And I think we're good to go. Everything looks to be alright. I can never get a green stream health. It's always orange. Actually, no, Rich, there's no, dude, you can say, I'm not one to get offended, man. Like, you can say anything you want to me, and I'm not gonna get my feelings hurt. Like, I'm just not a sensitive person like that. Do I carry Life Alert? No, I do not carry a Life Alert, but my phone has an SOS feature. So if I open my and it's right on my home screen too. So all I got to do is unlock my phone and hit my SOS and then hit send message. And it'll send a SOS message to the closest like emergency center, like your police station, fire department, whichever one's closest. And it also sends a message out to any numbers that I have pre-programmed to receive that. And I have my wife and my mother as, when I hit that, it'll send a message to them too. And then they can call emergency services to get things going or to make sure that things are already going. Yeah, Jefferson, it's actually like that was one of the biggest things that I wanted in a new phone when I got mine was the SOS feature because of, I mean, let's face it, I'm a cripple crawling and running through the woods. So I try to be as safe as possible, but accidents happen. Like, if I end up in a situation, then I need to be able to have somebody on their way in a moment's notice. And the SOS feature doesn't work through like cell service. It works through like the GPS and satellite. So as long as my GPS will pick up, which, I mean, that is anywhere in the world, my SOS feature will work. My little drawing board, we're going to have a drawing board for this. And I really wanted to do this stream from the porch tonight. It took me a little while to get set up because I went out and I started setting up on my porch because, I mean, it was beautiful out. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. But as soon as I got set up and I was about to start streaming, the wind picked up and it would have just killed my audio. So we had to come up here in the gear room and do it. I'm trying to give everybody a little bit of a chance to make it in here before we start going over what we're going to be doing. Going over the prologue. What is our purpose for this live stream? What are we going to be doing? What does it mean to me? Modern gear versus traditional mountain man and free trapper kit, things like that. So, yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a good time. And I've been wanting to start this live stream for a little while now, but I've just started. I finally got everything here that I needed for it. So we're going to kick this thing off. And, you know, I am learning while I'm doing this stream. I'm not going to come into this series and try to tell you guys that, like, I'm no history expert on the mountain men and the free trappers. I've got a pretty good knowledge base, but I am still learning. I think I actually left my resource book downstairs. I did. Oh, well. We don't really need it for now. So as we're going through this stream series, like I'm learning in between the live streams, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be alternating the living on Cripple Mountain one week, and then we're going to do Gear Room live stream the next week. And the Gear Room live streams is just me sharing my tips and tricks and things that help me be outdoors. Or like what is in my separate kits and things like that. Those are the gear room episodes. We got an unexpected rain for the last few hours, but it was a beautiful day before that. Jefferson, we got hammered this morning for like an hour and a half maybe. And then it was beautiful all day. I went out and did some muskrat trapping at a friend's pond this afternoon. And, I mean, it was awesome out there. The sun was shining, it was warm, the wind wasn't blowing. And then on my way back home, it just downpoured again. And then it got nice out, and then I went out to try to live stream, and it just shut it down. The wind's blowing pretty good out there right now. Oh... All right. Well, I'm sure that everybody will start coming in as they're coming. So let's get this going. Prologue. So what I want to do tonight is a Mountain Man Free Trappers kit. You know, what gear did they carry out into the woods? What gear did they not carry out into the woods? What was more common for these guys to start off with? What wasn't common? You know, because there was a big difference between a free trapper and a trap. You know, and I'm going to be throwing these terms together as far as mountain man and free trapper, because they go hand in hand with each other. A lot of the mountain men, almost all of the mountain men, were trappers. They were trappers or long hunters. We're going to be focusing on the trappers side of things, because that's more my heritage. My family roots go all the way back to the Blackfoot tribes that originally started trading with the Hudson's Bay Company. So that's kind of where I'm drawing my roots. That's where I want to get back to. We're going to be doing, in a manner of speaking, kind of like a walk back in time. I want to keep most of this Mountain Man and Free Trappers kit as vintage as possible. But there are going to be some things that will be modernized, and that is because, if you think about it, back in those days, those men carried the most modern equipment that they could get their hands on. I mean, everything was as up to date as it could be. Jeff Jackson, nice to see you. You're on just for now? Well, that's good. I'm glad you came over for a little bit. South Carolina, Rich. I might be going to one of the Carolinas at some point this year. I know I got one of the guys that, Dave Wheeler, who's a moderator in the HalfPace Outdoor group on Facebook. He lives in South Carolina, and I'm really trying to make it down there to meet him, because Dave seems like a really good guy. So I want to make it down there to meet up with him sometime this summer. Oh yeah, Rich, I did forget your truck broke down for a while there, didn't it? I'm glad you got back on the road. I got Jeff and Jeff in my live stream. That's awesome. So a lot of the mountain men, or a lot of the trappers, the free trappers, they started as guys who worked for the major trapping companies, and I'm talking about the companies like the Hudson's Bay Company, the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, the American Fur Company. There's numerous different fur trader companies that were out there, and what they would normally do is these companies would hire a individual, the top guy, and they usually was some type of general with military background or, you know, mountaineering background, and these men would put together their companies of men to go out into the mountains, follow the streams back and follow the rivers, and as they were following them, they would clean the beavers out. And that was the main fur that they trapped out there, was beaver. And it wasn't, they really didn't target too many other animals other than beaver. And that was because of the quality of beaver pelts that they were finding in North America. And that was just the fur worth the most money because of how dense beaver fur is. And I mean, back then, beaver fur felt hats was the in thing. So everybody that was a hatter needed beaver fur to make felt out of. So a lot of these guys didn't even know they brought ladies with them. Yeah, actually, you know, a lot of westward expansion was mapped by the trappers and the mountain men that went wandering off. I mean, it wasn't, those were the guys that really led and started westward expansion. It wasn't just droves of people going west. It was these free trappers and mountain men following the rivers and the streams and the old Indian trails and the wildlife trails, and they mapped them all out as they went. And they were the ones that established and opened up the wagon trails. You know, America was really built on the backs of trappers heading west looking for fur. It was not built on the backs of slaves like everybody wants to say. I mean, they did have their hand in building the country, but it was really, America was made, plotted, and carried on the shoulders of the mountain men and free trappers as they went out and they did their jobs. So the guys like, oh, now I'm falling short for names. General Ashley was one of the men he would put have a good one, Jeff. Thanks for stopping in, man. General Ashley is one of the first ones that comes to mind, and that's because he had his hand in the, he was part of the Hugh Glass story, and the Hugh Glass story really got a lot of fire underneath of it after Leonardo DiCaprio did that movie. But General Ashley, a lot of the guys would get their trapper companies together and their groups of men, and they would head west, and they would find spots where it was rich in fur. They would set up their trap camps, and then from there, these company men, because most free trappers started off as company trappers working for somebody else. It was a very expensive enterprise for your average man to just get into. I mean, most of them had a mule, a horse, and then all of their gear. So, you know, back then, that's the equivalent of us buying 2 trucks. So it was an expensive enterprise to get into. It wasn't a cheap thing for somebody to start and just wander off. It didn't work like that. A lot of free trappers like Jim Bridger and oh man, I'm at a total loss right now. Pretty sure I wrote their names down. Nope, I didn't. So, like Jim Bridger. I mean, Jim Bridger even started off as a young guy, like 18, 19 years old. He started working for the, I believe, American Fur Company at the time. And then ended up buying one of the fur companies, and him and a couple other guys changed the name of it. But what I'm trying to get to is these men started working for companies instead of working for themselves. And how that worked is they would get a salary of $300 to $400 per year, regardless of how many furs they brought back. They were paid a salary, they were supplied with their gear, and they would have to go out, and they were under contract to catch so many furs per year, and then haul those back to the rendezvous and trading posts to, you know, offload their fur and restock up on supplies, and then those companies would head back out into the wilderness and start all over again. All right, Rich, we'll be here for a little while. And after a couple years of doing this, as long as that trapper was efficient in, excuse me again. My wife made this like stuffed ricotta stuff, or I don't know, something with a lot of tomato sauce and Italian, and I got real bad heartburn today. So as long as the trapper would play his cards right, do his job well, and stayed with the company for so many years, even a couple years, 3 to 4 years, 9 times out of 10, the company would let that trapper go off with the gear that he was supplied, because by that time he'd already used it, he'd already modified it to work for him and make it work how he needed it to work most efficiently for him. So then you would have your company trapper break off from your company, and he would go out and he would start being a free trapper. The free trappers did not work for companies. They did not get paid a salary. These were the guys making actual money in the trapping business. They would go out and they would set up their camps. And I mean, they would have to get far away from the trapping companies too, because, or the fur companies. A lot of the fur companies were very almost militarized in a fashion. They had set territories and they had set boundaries, and they would fight and have feuds and start little local wars over their trapping boundaries, because fur was the game back then. And you had to protect your investment. It was an investment for these men to wander off into the wilderness to trap beaver. So they would war with each other over their grounds, and they would get out in front of each other and cause all kinds of problems and any kind of complications they could for the trappers following them. And they didn't, back then there was really no sense of management. So they would go in and they called it cleaning the area. And what they would do is they would go in and they would trap so heavily that they would remove the entire beaver population from the area. Management didn't really start coming into the game in that aspect until the early 1900s, the very late 1800s. That's when they were a little bit more concerned about management. But for the most part, trappers went in to clean areas out of beaver. Sounds like ginseng hunters of today. Yeah, that's one thing I've never even really looked into, Jefferson, was the ginseng hunters. I know that, I know it's worth a lot of money, and, I saw one thing on, I think it was Netflix, and I'm pretty sure it was called Filthy Riches. And these boys were from Kentucky, if I remember right. And I want to add this in here too, guys. If you have some bit of knowledge that you know different than me, please share that. I don't want to try to get this across like I'm the know-all, because I'm not. There's, like I said, there's things I'm still learning. So if we can teach each other, that's what I want to get out of this. This is going to be a DIY live stream. It's going to be learning based. Or you can just come hang out and watch what we do. So, back to free trappers. The free trappers had to get far away from the companies. The guys tend to fight over good spots. I know that stuff is worth I know the ginseng is worth a lot of money. It is worth an awful lot of money these days. So, I might have to do a little bit more research into that, just so I can have that knowledge base. I like to try to learn as much as I can, especially when it deals with, like, woods life. I mean, that's what gets me. That's where my passion is at with all this. So, the free trappers would leave the fur companies, and they would leave with their gear, they would leave with their horse, they would leave with their mule, all packed up, head out into the woods, and they would build their trapper camps in a rich area, a beaver rich area, and they would clean that area out, They would come back at the end of the season to the rendezvous or the trading post forts, and they would offload their furs, resupply, buy new traps if they needed new traps, pick up whatever new gear that they had to have, and they would head back out. And as time went on, they just went farther and farther and farther. Oh, hey, Huntsman, it took me a minute to see you come in. Who doesn't love beaver? Oh, we're not going to be turkey calling for coffee today because I filled my water bottle up. The wife's a little testy today, so we probably won't be harassing her too much. Now, did you guys know that the average trapper back in the 1800s... Fine, bye. So, today's trapper carries an average of 2 dozen up to 100, 150 traps. Jeff Dunlap, he runs one of the trapping groups on Facebook, Kendall Gray, these guys run around with 100 traps, a truckload of traps. Back when the free trappers and the company trappers and the mountain men were doing it, they only ran off into the woods on average with a half a dozen to a dozen traps. But those traps were also twice as heavy as they are today. So whereas like my average number 2 trap is a 4-pound trap, the average beaver trap back then was like 6 to 7 pounds. And part of that is because of the spring system that's used to close them. We have, especially me, I carry coil spring traps, so it's just little music wire springs that force the trap closed. Back then they were, it looked like a leaf spring almost. Long springs. But it was just a flat bar in like a U shape that closed around the trap jaws with a loop on the end. And they usually had 2 long springs on either side of the trap. The trapper would have to stand on those long springs to depress them, spread the trap jaws, and then set the pan with the trap dog. And most of the time what they would do is they would drive a long pole straight down into the mud, and they would make a caster mound set. And a caster mound comes from the caster glands in beaver that are at the base of the tail. Oh, Rich, redheads are the most fun. Mine's a redhead. Just my vape, guys. Don't worry about it. So most of these trappers would only head off into the wilderness with a half a dozen to a dozen traps, and that would be enough to keep them busy. Because, I mean, trapping beaver is hard work. It is not like land trapping. You are breaking through ice, and you are wading through water, and you are digging. They would bust the dams open and the huts open and set the traps at the mouth of those breaks. And then a beaver's natural instinct is to stop flowing water. So when the beaver would come out, it would figure out that water is flowing where it's not supposed to be, or this is open where it's not supposed to be, and it would end up getting caught. So, after the mountain man would catch his beaver, and they were usually caught on drowning style rigs. That's why the traps were so heavy, because the beaver would get caught by a foot or 2 feet and not able to swim with that kind of weight attached to it, and it would drown the beaver. which, I mean, hey, in the trapping world, that's a fairly quick death, because if you think about it, the animal is underwater, it's drowning, and it's in panic mode. Oh, yeah, Rich, that would shut it down for me too. I got a brother that whines about as much as a sister, so maybe a little bit more. So the men would take, they'd go out, they'd collect their beaver for the day, they'd reset their traps, they would take those beaver back to camp, skin them out. For the most part, they only ever ate the tail of the beaver. They would harvest the castor glands, hang the castor glands out to dry. And even today, the castor is still worth quite a bit of money compared to the fur. The trappers called the castor medicine, and they usually carried it in a little wooden vial with a really tight cork on the top, and mixed it with a nutmeg. They would put cinnamon in there, and let me think, the castor gland, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, and they would use, I believe it was anise, they would put anise in there. And that's what they would use to bait their sets, because the beaver can smell up to a mile, and their beavers are very territorial outside of other animals in its own little colony. So the beaver would come out and either sense flowing water, sense something is wrong, go to fix it and get caught, or, hey, there's something in my territory that's not supposed to be there, and go and get caught. So after harvesting the tail, skinning the tail out, they would usually hang it on a pole to start smoking and slow roast the tail, because the tail is considered a delicacy, always has been. And then they would take willow branches and make hoops. Real big, real small. I mean, anything from like a 12-inch diameter all the way up to, I think I've seen beaver hoops 3-foot diameter. And they would lace their fur onto these beaver hoops and set them out to dry. After they were dried, well, they would flesh them. And that's where you remove all of the meat and the fat off of the pelts. Then they would lace them up on these hoops, set those hoops out to dry. And as those dried, they would just start baling them up. The average bale of beaver furs was 90 furs. Weight-wise, I couldn't tell you how much weight that was. I don't remember the exact number. This is why I need my reference book, and I left it downstairs. So, what kind of gear did these guys carry? You know, most of the time they carried a wedge tent. They didn't necessarily just carry tarps. They didn't carry just an oilcloth tarp. They actually carried, most of them carried wedge tents. If they were out with a company, the companies would carry the wall style tents. You know, the straight up sides and then a little bit of an A-frame roof on them. They didn't carry oil slick tarps like everybody, like the common belief is. And there's another common belief too. Mountain men and free trappers, beaver bale averages 90 pounds. Okay, that's what it is. So the bale would average 90 pounds, not 90 furs. Thank you. See, and that's what I mean. I want you guys to correct me if you catch me saying something wrong. Or if you've got something to add into it, then add that in there. Thank Google. I've actually been reading, the latest one that I've been reading is called, I believe it's Mountain Men Lore by George Laycock. You're taking notes. Oh, this ain't a college lecture. Where was I at? Okay, yeah. So they didn't carry oilskin tarps. They usually carried wedge tents. And the wedge tent was, I mean, just like the basic scout tents of today. Simple A-frame style, no straight sides on them. All new for your not so humble self. I'm still learning too. Man. There's a lot of it out there that I don't have the knowledge of yet. But I'll be upfront and tell you guys that I don't. I'm going to share what I know and what I'm learning along the way. And those wedge tents, they would either be oilskin or they would be waxed canvas. Back then, most of them were oilskin. And that's why they needed mules, because those tents are heavy. They're not lightweight like they are today. Materials back then were heavy material. So they had their wedge tents. They usually had tinware, cookware. Their gear was very basic. You know, every one of them headed off into the woods with at least a pocket axe. Part of what we're going to be doing is actually making our own wedge tent. And I'm not sure if I'm going to treat it oilskin style or if I'm going to do waxed yet. I'm thinking about doing oilskin because I think the oilskin is a little bit cheaper. Or not cheaper, but lighter. Might be a little bit cheaper too. So they would carry their shelter. They would carry their pocket axe, at a minimum a pocket axe. Most of them carried the equivalent of like today's boy's axe. A 19 to 22 inch, 1 3/4 pound. If you look up the Hudson Bay Trapper's axe, that's it. That's exactly what they carried, and that's what I styled this after. That was probably loud, huh? That's what I styled this after, was the Hudson's Bay issued Trapper axe. They had the deep beard on them. The only difference is mine has a larger pawl on the back. Most of them were cut off quite a bit shorter. And instead of them being almost 2 pounds, they were between, the bit itself was between 1.5 pounds to 1 3/4 pounds. And most of them did not have this teardrop style. What's this called? I don't remember what this is called right now. But they were not, most of the axes back then did not have this teardrop style shape in the bit. It was actually more like a tomahawk. And those Hudson Bay Trappers axes is where most of the Native American style tomahawk came from, because the Hudson Bay Company traded those tomahawks for furs. Well, back then they were called axes. Hudson Bay Company has a long, bloody history with trappers. Epic stories. Absolutely. You know, Hudson Bay Company was always pretty much at a bit of a war with the North American Fur Company, with the Rocky Mountain Fur Company. I mean, they all just fought everybody all the time for their trapping grounds. And it was always bloody. And I mean, huge vendettas. They would come in and wipe out entire trapper camps. They would Hudson Bay was very famous for actually getting the Native Americans and the First Nations from Canada involved. And they would send the First Nations and the Native Americans after these other fur companies and just have them wipe out entire camps. The Hudson's Bay Company was more famous for that than all of the other ones that were ever established throughout the entire fur trade business. So, back to gear. You know, they had their tent, they had their axe, they had their... most of them actually did not carry compasses because they read the sun for navigation. They carried their musket. Most of them flintlocks, and most of them, I believe, I've read anywhere from a 32 caliber up to, I believe, like a 62 or 64 caliber. All right, man, we'll be here. We're gonna be here a while. This one's going to be about a 2-hour stream, and we started at 7. They would carry their fire starting kit, which even in the North American Fur Company and the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, they used Hudson's Bay tinder kits, which was a little copper tin about that big that would fit their flint and steel, and they usually carried extra rifle flints in there. Jefferson, there is no way that the men of today could work as hard as the mountain men that established all of it. There's just no way. There was no soft when it came to the mountain men and free trappers that established the trade. These were hard men that led absolutely incredible lives and had the, I mean, it was a tough life. You were living in the wilderness. You were fighting other fur companies. You were up against the natives all the time. You know, the trapper companies and the trappers and the natives, they were only on good terms while trade was happening. If they weren't trading, they were warring. And that's even out on the fur routes. And that's because out on the fur routes, I mean, white man was taking from the livelihood of the natives. So, rightfully so. And we're not starting a huge race war with that comment either. But that's how it was. They fought each other constantly. And, you know, it took more than the average man to be able to survive that. Now, a couple other things in their kits. They would usually carry 2 different knives. One for, like, you know, your normal woodsman chores. And then they would carry their skinning knife. And with beaver, that's usually a blade about yay long. About 6 to 8 inches long. And it's got a deep belly on it. There's no point at the end of the blade. It was a rounded point. And they're really kind of goofy looking. You know what? We got the drawing board. This is what we brought this up here for. So this would have been your, I mean, even today, this is your average beaver fleshing and pelting knife. They were shaped like this. There was no point on it. They were all rounded off. And even today, if you get onto like FNT Post or any of the trapping supply companies, this is your beaver pelting knife. If they were skinning something other than beaver, they usually used their camp knife. I gotta be careful because part of this one is sharp. This is today's average fleshing knife. You've got a dull blade on the inside, and I mean this is extremely dull. You can actually see the blunted edge of it. But this side is razor sharp. And this is for cutting the fat and the gristle and the extra meat off of the pelt, while this is for actually scraping it. And that comes into play for different species being trapped or different pelts being worked. Your average skinning knife, both of mine are Weeby. This is your average skinning knife. Short, very pointed, very sharp, about 3 inches long, 3.5 inches long. But back then, they usually used just their camp knife for skinning anything else other than the beaver. And they really didn't go after too much else other than the beaver outside of food animals like your deer and your elk and your moose. They would occasionally shoot a bear for food. I'm not speaking in the self-defense aspect because there was probably a lot of bear shot as far as self-defense would go. And then you got the guys like Hugh Glass who takes a bear out with a knife. I mean, come on. And that's a true story. Like, there's no exaggerations to that one either. I have read multiple interpretations on the Hugh Glass story, and it is across the board. He took that bear out with a knife. He shot it once in the chest, but he ultimately killed that bear with the knife. And they usually carried ammunition that would weigh, I believe it was the average rifle ammunition that they carried was 60 balls to a pound. So they would also carry their bullet mold. They would carry extra lead to make ammunition. Most of the time for their lead, what they were doing, if they didn't carry an ingot of lead out, they were removing their lead balls from whatever they shot and reforming them in their bullet press. You know, they carried their beaver knife, they carried their camp knife. Now, I haven't found too much actually referring to them carrying a patch knife. Most of what I find as far as people carrying patch knives back then, that was more of a military thing or a long hunter thing. Maybe it was just trappers trying to drop weight, but I've not really found too many accounts of trappers carrying patch knives in their packs. When we go through the process where we're going to start making our pack, I actually bought a patch knife instead of a camp knife for this project because I'm going to be changing a few things. We're going to modernize a couple things in the pack if we can. And, you know, if I can drop weight in certain pieces, then I'm going to do that. And I have to. I mean, these men back then, they tailored their gear to fit them. So in trying to keep as traditional as I can, while still accomplishing what I want to accomplish, I'm going to tailor some things for me. It's my project. I'm going to do what I want. food-wise, they usually didn't carry too much food except for a pound of wheat flour. They didn't carry cornmeal back then very often. That was a Native American thing. They carried wheat flour. And they usually only carried up to 2 pounds of wheat flour at a time. They didn't carry... I've seen some accounts where they carried up to 5 pounds. I will correct that. I've seen accounts where they've carried 2 pounds up to 5 pounds of wheat flour. Outside of that, if they needed food, they hunted or gathered it. The average trapper left, they didn't really carry coffee too often. Every now and again, you'd find one that did. Jim Bridger was a coffee carrier. Jefferson Douglas was a coffee carrier. Hugh Glass did not carry coffee. He carried tobacco and tea. So it was kind of up to the trapper's discretion if he carried coffee or tea. All of them carried tobacco, whether for personal use or for trade use. They all carried tobacco. And back then, they would have been carrying leaf tobacco instead of plug tobacco. I did not find yet, I have not found anybody carrying plug tobacco until I believe it's been like later into the 1800s, almost toward the end of the fur trade. Streamlabs has given... Is my stream coming through okay, guys? Because my Streamlabs is giving me a bunch of notifications right now. What's going on here? Jefferson, help me out. It's all good? Okay, man. Thanks. I was getting worried because I'm getting notifications like the request is missing a valid API key. And then it has something else showing up. They're like taking turns flipping around on the screen here. Yeah, it's going to do whatever it wants to do. This phone hasn't been right since I got it wet. Waterproof phone is not a waterproof phone. Rich Crabtree is a coffee carrier for sure. I'm a coffee carrier. I keep 2 tea bags, and I think I've had the same 2 tea bags in my pack for the last year. I just don't drink tea. It's all coffee, man. Death Wish coffee. Rich, if you have not tried Death Wish coffee, you got to give that a shot. That's by far the best coffee I have drank so far. It's good, man. If you like a dark roast strong coffee, you got to try Death Wish. Now, as far as clothing went, a lot of these guys went off and they were wearing pretty much all wool and cotton. Some of them would make clothing out of canvas, but not very often. It was usually all wool and cotton. Cotton undershirt, cotton overshirt. They would usually wear a wool... I believe I keep finding them called like knee coats, almost like a duster or a shorter trench coat. And that was usually made of wool or flannel was another material. They would carry flannel along with the wool. Yeah, they probably didn't have too much ice until wintertime. You know, that their boots were, when these guys were just starting off, their boots were whatever they could manage to buy while they were still in civilization. A lot of the mountain man look did not happen until they were 6 months into their trapping career, when they were starting to shoot the larger animals for food and tan those hides to make clothing out of them. And then the mountain man found out that, you know, their boots sucked. The boots they would buy in civilization sucked. So they would go out and they started making the same kind of material and clothing that the natives were carrying. So they were making buckskin clothing, and they were making moccasins, because the moccasin had a little bit more water resistance to it, and if they did soak all the way through, the moccasin dried out faster. And it was warmer. I mean, mucklucks. That's basically the wintertime moccasin is a muckluck. I hope I'm saying that word right. So, you know, they would, hey Jay, how's it going? So, you know, the mountain man over time adopted a lot of the Native American style and the Native American clothing, and they would let their hair grow long, and that's another reason why most mountain men and trappers were clean shaven, was because that was more accepted by the Native Americans that they would have had to deal with than a white man with a long beard. They would let their hair grow out to match the Native American. A lot of the guys, like Jim Bridger, he had a couple different Native American wives, and they did that to help integrate themselves into the Native American society so that they could have better fur trading business. And it would also give them a sense of security, because while they're not dealing with the Native Americans, if they see, you know, if the natives saw a white man out in the wilderness with a native woman, they usually left them alone. Everything that the mountain man did once he got embedded into his career was basically to not imitate, but go along with whatever the natives were doing. And it was for peace, it was for durability of their clothing and their gear. It was just an easier, more efficient, more durable way to carry themselves. Just got home from work. Jay, when you're out, okay, I'm going to break topic a little bit, but I've been meaning to ask you this. Jay, when you're on the river, do you go, like, are you just like from one side of Ohio to the other, or do you go like past Ohio's borders either way? Oh, Ramsey, how you doing, man? Been working a lot since First Virginia. We're doing pretty good. Yeah, man, he was so excited when he caught that fish. He did not know how to contain himself. That was probably the funniest thing I've caught on video yet. Just, guys, it was hilarious. And I thought he was bluffing at first. I don't know how, I mean, he's a kid, so I take him out fishing, and he's always been yelling, I caught a fish, and it's usually just his bait. So, yeah, when he starts yelling in the video, Daddy, I caught a fish, and I just kind of kept on watching my lines because I thought he was bluffing me out. Like, it actually took the other guy with us to say, no, he actually caught a fish, and I had to go hobbling over there as fast as I could. Oh, that was a fun night. That's going to be one of the better videos, I think, on my channel. Okay, so now here's where I want a little bit of participation. You tend to stay in the Huntington area. I've been all the way up to Oh, that's cool, Jay. That's cool, man. Thanks, Ramsey. You know, my stepdad raised, while we were growing up, I keep breaking topic. I don't even care right now. So, while we were growing up, you know, okay, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of family history here. My biological father abandoned my mom when he found out that she was pregnant. He told her, abort the baby. I don't want a kid. I don't think you should have a kid. So my mom said, no, I'm keeping him. And Russell walked away. So in comes Dave. Dave half-ass adopted me. He didn't go through the court proceedings like is supposed to happen for an adoption. He went over my mom's head and he signed my birth certificate. And that's how I have my last name, as Leisure. Not leisure, the way that it's spelled and how everybody says it, it's Leisure. So he signed my birth certificate, and he was never supposed to. I was supposed to be a Sweelie. So Dave, through our entire childhood, was nothing but false promises. He would hold his promise every now and again. Oh, I'll take you guys out to do this, and you know, a couple times a year he'd follow through with that, but not very often. So then in comes Rob. Rob was my stepdad from the time I was 6 until I was 17. Well, I think I might have been 18 when the divorce was finalized. But my stepdad was the one who taught me most of what I know. And I can maybe remember 2 or 3 times where Rob told us he would do something and he didn't end up doing it. But in his defense, he was working. I mean, Rob worked for what he had. He worked to provide for us. And he did his absolute best that he could. So Rob was the one who taught me how to hunt. Rob was the one who taught me how to fish. Rob was the one who took me on my first year on a trap line when I was 13. And then after that, he worked, so it was really hard for us to get out trapping after that. I would usually load up I had an LT80 Suzuki 4-wheeler, and I would strap a milk cart to the back, and I would throw my traps in my little milk cart, and I would take off down the train tracks on my 4-wheeler. Or I would take off down the road to Stall's Farm Market. I did a lot of trapping on a farm market that my mom used to work for. So Rob taught me most of what I know. When it came to camping and survival, that came from Boy Scouts. I was in Boy Scouts from the time I was 18, or from the time I was 11 until I was 18. And I had awesome scoutmasters. I had very knowledgeable scoutmasters that were just great guys. And I'm still really close friends with one of them. Dale is one of my best friends. And there's even times now where I still call Dale, like, hey, just about every one of my Ramsey, I miss those days. But when we weren't I don't miss the times that we weren't in the woods. Rob didn't make our childhoods easy at home. And I don't want to sit here and try to just spill out like, oh, you know, I had a shitty childhood at home. It wasn't that bad. I won't say that I was abused, but my mom and those outside will say that we got it handed to us a lot harder than we ever should have. I look back at it like, no, we were kids, we screwed up, we did things wrong, we got punished for it. And my stepdad was not afraid to whip our ass with a paddle. And I think that's what a lot of today's generation is missing, you know? Nobody wants to discipline their kids other than telling them no. And that shit don't work. It does not work. Like, we see that now. It doesn't work like that. So, I got my ass handed to me as a kid when I screwed up. I didn't see it any other way than that. But Rob was my father. Rob taught me what I know. Rob helped make me who I am today. The other two played their parts in it, but when it comes down to it, they taught me how to not be a dad. They taught me how I shouldn't treat my son. They taught me what I shouldn't do as a parent. They taught me, by not keeping their word, that I need to keep my word. I need to do what I say I'm going to do, especially when that comes to my boy. Like, and we're going way off topic here. You know, I don't care when somebody says, oh, like, you shouldn't do that with your kid, or you shouldn't do that with your kid. You know what? You're not the one raising him. I am. So I'm going to take my kid out, and I'm going to teach him the things that I know how to do. And I'm going to teach him the things that make me happy. And, you know, I'm watching him grow to enjoy the things that I grew up enjoying. I don't see the problem with disciplining my child, and I don't see the problem with giving him whatever he wants. But we do that within reason, too. Like, I don't know. Okay, back to Cripple Mountain. What is Cripple Mountain? Cripple Mountain to me is all of the challenges that I have had to crawl up to get where I am today. All of the obstacles that I've had to find my way around. Yeah, that's another thing, Rich. Everybody wants, oh, my kid is hyper. They've got ADD. No, they don't. They've just got too much energy that parent doesn't know how to handle. They wanted to dope my brother up on Ritalin when he was a kid, and my mom said absolutely not. When he was in school, he couldn't focus. You get him out of school and doing something he liked to do, and he was perfectly fine. So, excuse me for a second, guys. Actually, that's not doing it. So, we're about to pull a Steve and start drinking whiskey on a live stream, although he drinks bourbon. He's a bourbon man. I'm a whiskey fan. There we go. That's a little better. Let that whistle. So Cripple Mountain is a psychological and physical mountain, metaphorical, that I've had to climb up to get where I am. To bring myself from waking up in that hospital bed and being told you'll never walk again, to getting back out on my trap line 6 years ago. And even up to today, getting back out there and doing stuff solo. and back to wandering through the woods on my own again. You know, those are not... I looked at it, you know, I didn't realize the hard journey that I had until I started talking to other people with spinal cord injuries. And I didn't start talking to other people with spinal cord injuries until I started my YouTube channel. Because I always looked at it like there's people way worse off than I am. So how can I come onto the scene and be like, okay, we're going to rep the spinal cord injury and disability group in the outdoors world? How can I do that if I'm not in a wheelchair? Well, I've learned that I can do that because I had to go through all of that. I had to wake up with a completely nerveless right leg and 5% response out of my left. And I had to learn how to walk again. You know, I was in a wheelchair for a month, but I wasn't in my wheelchair all the time. I still had the mountain of challenge of learning how to walk again and building that stamina up and getting some of my balance back. Like, come on, let's be real. I'm not all that balanced. I fall all the damn time. So, you know, I had to crawl up out of the dirt and pick myself up and brush my knees off and keep on going. I spent 10 years after my surgeries wrapped up in drugs and wrapped up in alcohol and stuck in the depression of this is life, this is how life is going to be, it's not ever going to get any better. You know, I'm not the physical person that even mentally then, I was not the person that I used to be. I was a completely different person. I was mad at the world. I was mad at myself. I was mad at everything around me, because why does anybody deserve to be dealt that kind of hand? And when I grew up, I realized that that's not how it works. I realized that things happen, and there's nothing we can do about it except for pick ourselves up and keep going. And in its own way, that's a mountain. I mean, you're starting. Let's get the drawing board back out. I'm gonna be artist today on a live stream. I mean, you're starting as a normal stick figure, happy walking human being, and then all of a sudden, like, it's not cut off, but it don't work right anymore, and this one only works at half efficiency. So then you gotta, you know, build yourself back up and be better. So then from there, you know, you got all these ups and downs. That looks a hell of a lot like a mountain. Some days you're good, some days you're bad, some months you're good, some months you're bad. I mean, it happens. There's nothing we can do to control the things like that happen to us in our lives. So what is the point in living in a mad and sour attitude about it? You have to find your joy. And if you don't, your body and the life that you're living in is just going to eat you alive. And even through my depressed years, I refuse to give in to that. Like, I was blessed that I never had to deal with suicidal thoughts. That was something I never experienced, was suicidal thoughts. What I experienced was how can I run away from it? But there was no running away from it. You have to build yourself up and just be better. Healing is more than a physical attribute. It is a huge mental game. Exactly, Ramsey. I saw something I've seen it on Facebook a few times, and I've seen it, somebody sent it to me in an email once, but it's always stuck with me because me and my brother took two different routes in the way that we live. Two brothers grew up in the same home, and they watched their dad drink and be an alcoholic. The one son grew up and he drank and he was an alcoholic. And when he was asked why, he said, because I watched my father. And the other son grew up and he led a normal life. He didn't drink. He wasn't an alcoholic. He did what he was supposed to do. He cared for his family the way that he was supposed to. And somebody asked him why. And he said, because I watched my father. It is all about perspective and the choices that you make for yourself that determine the quality of life you're going to live. So, you know, we had a mountain to deal with. I had a mountain to deal with growing up that was my father's situation. I had a mountain to deal with when I went through my spinal surgeries. I had a mountain to deal with and overcome with the addictions. And then I guess I started rappelling down the mountain when I met my wife because I was doing, I was clean for about almost 2 years when me and my wife got together. But I still had the urges and the temptations to go back to what I was doing. And then my wife came onto the scene and she took all that away. So my wife was my lifeline, and she was the one that made me a better person. She made me want to be a better person. So we're living at the peak of Cripple Mountain, and I guess we're slowly starting to kind of trickle back down into the valleys below. Because the valleys aren't storm beaten. They're sanctuaries. You know, the valleys are where you build your home. The valleys are where you can rest after climbing the mountains. The valleys are where the peace is at. And that's where I am today. I'm in one of the valleys living on Cripple Mountain. And I call it Cripple Mountain because I don't play the whole disabled game. I'm not disabled. I refuse to say I'm, I'll use the disabled hashtag, but that's because of the message I'm trying to get out. I'm not a disabled person. I'm a cripple. I still go out and do what I want to do, and I get my shit done. I accomplish what I set out to do. It just might take me a little bit longer. I'm a procrastinating cripple. There we go. Exactly, Jefferson. You have to want it. If you don't want it, you're not ever going to be better. You're not ever going to get better. And it amazes me that because I'm in a lot of disability groups and spinal cord injury groups and things like that now. And again, because of the message that I'm trying to get out, don't live stuck. Don't live negative. There's nothing you can do about it. So try to be positive in life. Try to be happy. You know, find what you love to do and go do it. I'm not going to tell you to do what I do to make you happy, because what I do that makes me happy doesn't necessarily make the next person happy. But I feel that we should all have some kind of escape and something that we love to do, especially in this SCI world, that allows us to get out of it, to get out of our head, and to not focus on the pain and not focus on the trials and tribulations that we had to go through. Oh, sorry, Ramsey, I just saw this. Can I ask a question? Did the oldest son revert back into the cycle of drinking? My brother is older than me, and he's a drunk, kind of like my father used to be, but my dad hasn't drank in years now. Okay, Ramsey, I am the oldest son of 3 that were in the home. One was a stepbrother, and we unfortunately have no communication with him anymore. But my younger brother is he's made it rough on himself. That's all I really want to say about it. I haven't spoke to my brother in a civil manner in probably 3 years now. And in all honesty, it's because I'm probably the only person in the family who holds him accountable for the things he's done wrong. I don't keep my mouth shut. If I think something, I say it. And there's a lot of people in the world who don't like that. My brother's one of them. Being on those canoe and kayak trips would make me very happy, so I'm with you there. I was unsure how much I was going to like my kayak. That's why I didn't buy one last year, and I bought my canoe. And then this year I bought my kayak, and it's been a total game changer. I wish I'd have bought one last year. Those kayaks are a lot of fun. I love my kayak. It is so much easier to move around than the canoe. The only thing I'll say about my kayak is I wish I would have got a 12-footer. Except for the day we did the Mahoning River trip. I was glad to have a 10-footer then. But a 12-footer would be nice when I'm out doing overnighter or camping trips, just for that little bit of extra hauling room. I can still manage my canoe. It's only like 72 pounds. But if I have to portage that, I'm not doing it on my own. I need to get a... they make folding dollies, like for stuff around. And I had a guy who took a folding dolly, and he could strap it to the gunwales on his canoe, flip the canoe over, and then he had wheels on his canoe. And I just haven't... I'm cheap, and I usually blow my money on camping gear rather than boating gear. So I have yet to buy the dolly and make it work. No, Ramsey, I am completely transparent. I'm an open book. You can ask me anything. I think that transparency is going to be a huge part of what makes my channel tick. Because people, they're going to either want to know or need to know. And that's what's going to make this all work, is me sharing my life. So, and I'll tell you guys right now, if I did, I mean, I've done wrong in my life. So I'll share those experiences when the time comes. I'm an open book, man. If you want to know something, do not ever be afraid to ask. Do not ever think you're going to offend me. I'm not a snowflake. I can handle shit. Yeah, me and my brother don't see eye to eye on anything at all whatsoever. Our relationship is just better if we don't speak, unfortunately. I wish that we could see eye to eye. I wish that we could get along. But there's things I do that he doesn't agree with, and there's things he does that I don't agree with. So unfortunately, it's a lot easier to not talk than to constantly fight with somebody. And I'm sure you fully understand that. So, back to Cripple Mountain. What kind of things in our pack or in this little kit that we're going to be building I'm a Buckeye. I think I'm cool as hell, so thanks. I live my life, man. I do the best I can to provide for my family. I do what I can for my son to try to help him be the best, bring out the best potential that he has. I don't know. I don't. Yeah. I do what I can. I try to raise my son the best that I can. I take all of the experiences that I had growing up, and I try to change the bad ones to make them work better, or I try to take the good things and incorporate that into what I'm teaching my son. I think that's the biggest thing about raising kids is you got to do the things that you love to do when you were a kid with your kids, and your kids are going to grow up loving to do those same things. You know, and if he grows up to be a gamer, then I'll have him talk to my brother-in-law, because my brother-in-law is the gamer. I just want my kid to be happy. I want me to be happy. There's no reason in being sour about life. Okay, so back to what I was going to get to. What kind of gear in our little Free Trapper and Mountain Man kit can we modernize? What do you guys feel could be modernized without taking away from the vintage feel? Excuse me. Something I've been thinking about, because most of the wedge tents that they carried. Now I have two options here. We can make, I'm not going to say because this is going to be a DIY live stream series. So basically you guys are going to be sitting here watching me sew this stuff together live. I mean, we're not getting the sewing machine out. We're going to do this just how the mountain men and the free trappers would when they were starting their careers. We're going to be doing everything by hand. There will be some parts of the kit that are bought, just like the company men going out would have done. You know, things like my axe. We've already got technically we've already got the Hudson Bay axe, but Cold Steel has recently come out with a Hudson Bay trapper's axe that's actually a like full-on replica. It's got the tomahawk round handle. It's got the like half a hammer paw size that mine does. It's got the deep beard on the axe with the nice rounded face on it and the flat top. So I'm debating on whether or not I want to trade off this axe for a Hudson Bay's replica, because even the men in the North American Fur Company and the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, they ended up carrying, most of them, the Hudson Bay trapper's axe. Or they would carry a double bit pocket axe. That was the majority for most of them. Yeah, Ramsey, I have not got to take it out yet, and I think it's down in my envoy. It is. I went out and bought one of those. I'm gonna have to order one online because none of the shops around me, even Runzo's, there's this local sports shop. Every time I walk into Runzo's, all of them behind the counter, hey, there's the trapper! Because I'm like the only trapper within 20 miles of me. They've got my number down there, so when they get new traps in, they call me. Like, on the spot, they call me. Or one of my friends that works down there, she'll send me a message. Hey, we got this in new. Do you want one? Should I set it behind the counter? I've been looking for the wire, like, minnow and crawdad traps all I can. I can't find them anywhere. And Runzo's has not ordered them yet. So I went out and I bought, I went to Runzo's and I bought a, I think it's called a dip net. You unfold this thing and then hook the net up, and the wires are like a dome shape. Drawing board. It looks like this. There's a little plate up here with a eye, and then I tie my rope and float to that. Let's draw a better float. That looked like crap, huh? So there's my float line going down to the eye, and then it's got this little metal plate, and these arms, there's 4 arms that stick off of it, and they kind of, when you unfold it, they're perfectly straight out. But when you attach the net, it makes them arc. I hope you guys can see this okay. Makes them arc, and then the net comes across like this, and it's got a little bit of a sag in the middle. So, yeah, I went out and bought, I think it's called a dip net. Am I right? If anybody knows, I'm pretty sure it's called a dip net. If I'm not right, then tell me what it's called. But the only issue with this is you have to make a bait box, because you can't just let your, like, crawdads are mainly in creeks and shallow ponds or shallow water. So if you just set your bait in the net, it's gonna either like float away, or you're gonna get a catfish that comes up in the net, because crawfish like fresh fish bait. Or you're going to get a catfish that comes in here and picks the bait up and then swims away, because it's all open up here. This is all opened up. It's just a net on the bottom. So what I did for a bait box was, my wife had a couple of those suet block bird feeder. It's a little wire cage that she puts like a bird feed cake in. And those bird feed cakes have suet, which is like, I guess it's beef fat, rendered beef fat. She had one laying around, so that's what I took for a bait box, and my idea is to suspend it from here because the chain on it is long enough that it'll sit in the bottom of my net. And I have taken it on my kayak with me when I went to Clendening and did that stealth overnighter the other day. Oh, I don't know if you follow me on Facebook to have seen that, Ramsey. I did a stealth wild camp out at Clendening Lake a couple nights ago. So I took my dip net out with me and I was going to set it, but I didn't end up catching any fish, so I didn't get to set my net. But I've taken it out like 3 times now and have not got to put it out. When me and my kid go check muskrat traps tomorrow, I'm going to stop by a creek on the way out there and set it out. And no, Ramsey, it's not trapping season yet. There's a close friend of the family who has a private pond, and the muskrats are just absolutely obliterating the shoreline. So I'm helping him clean the muskrats out of his pond. So I went out, set my traps today. He's going to keep an eye on them. If I catch something, he's going to call me. I'm going to go out and get it. The pelts aren't going to be worth much. Oh, the pelts aren't going to be worth anything. I can't do anything with summer pelts. But we might try to do a catch and cook muskrat. If I can be sure that the muskrat died within a certain window. You know, the water is warmer now, and it's a pond, so the water in the pond is warmer than it is in the lakes. And if there's any chance that that muskrat meat is spoiled, I'm not going to be even remotely trying to cook it. But I've heard muskrat taste really good. So, I don't know. I'm one of those, I'll try eating anything first. Anything once. And, yeah, on our way out there, we're going to stop somewhere and... Yeah, Jefferson, I could not imagine what a spoiled muskrat would taste like. I bet that'd be pretty gross. But I'm in a couple trapping groups, and there's actually a lot of guys that eat the muskrats. I don't trap muskrats in the winter. I don't do water trapping really at all. Like, I don't mess... My first year trapping, I was trapping on the edge of a swamp, and there was a muskrat hut. I mean, a big old hut too. This thing had to stick up out of the water probably almost 2 feet, and it was bigger around than my arm span, and I'm 5'4". My arm span's about 5 foot. So, and I mean, you could see the run coming right out of the hut. And they had a nice little hole in the ice. And I took my tomahawk and I cut a hole through the ice so I could see how thick it was. And up close to shore, the ice was about 3 inches thick. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be safe. I can go out here. I can set my traps. And I can get out of there and I'll be perfectly fine. All right, Ramsey. Have a good one. Thanks for stopping in, man. So I went out on the ice and I wasn't even that far out into the water. I mean, I was probably less than 10 yards away from the shore. And I busted right through that ice and I went up to my arms. And I mean, I was touching bottom, but I went up. Like, after that, I quit messing with water trapping. So I don't trap for muskrats during trapping season. And I don't, other than helping this guy out, I've never trapped in the off season. Because, I mean, pelts aren't worth anything. So we're going to see what happens. But yeah, that time I went through the ice scared me enough that I don't mess with cold water. When I get cold, my knees lock up and my hips lock up and I can't walk. So it becomes an emergency, and that time became a real emergency real fast. And it is insanely difficult to start a fire when you are soaked to the bone in ice cold freezing water and your hands are shaking like this and you're trying to strike a ferro rod. It doesn't work out all that great. It's hard work to get a fire going when you are on the edge of hypothermia. I ended up I tried to get my fire going and I couldn't get it going. So I jumped in the trapping cart and I told Stunt, take me back to the truck. And luckily the truck was within 100 yards. I got in the truck, I stripped completely down and just blasted the heat as high as it would go. That day was a rough day. That was probably the hardest day on my trap line I ever saw. Frozen water is no joke. And that was my first time I ever went through ice. Like, I was in absolutely no way prepared for it. And even though my head didn't go under, like, just that initial shock was, it was absolutely brutal. Like, that pain from here down of water that's below 32 degrees is some of the most intense pain I'd ever felt. That was rough. So yeah, now I'll trap along the edge of creeks until the water freezes. And even then, like, I'm so cautious that I get on my hands and knees. I don't care if it's a couple inches of water. Like, it put a fear in me. I'll admit it. It put a certain level of fear in me that yeah, I don't mess with frozen water. I don't mess with cold water. If it's more than an elbow deep, forget about it. Okay, so in our kit, this is where I need a little bit of participation from you guys. What do you feel could be modernized in our DIY Mountain Man kit? Now, I am going to try to stick with most of these mountain men and trappers, even the company guys and the free trappers. They would usually walk off into the wilderness and they would have their canvas backpack. And it wasn't even really a backpack, it was more like a knapsack or a haversack. I'm not going to do the whole haversack deal because things hanging off my shoulder throws my balance off. So whatever kind of pack we end up doing is going to be a traditional style, over both shoulders backpack. We're going to do that out of canvas for sure. Now, the Wedge Tent, we have a couple options here. I can do the Wedge Tent with white canvas, green canvas, or in a more modern aspect, we could order some white ripstop nylon tarp material, which would really significantly drop the weight. While I don't have a mule to help me move gear around or carry gear off into the woods, I do have my pack dogs. So let's keep them into consideration through this project too. And my pack dogs both can carry about 15 pounds. Sydney, with her hips the way they are, I want to try to keep her about 12 pounds and below. So if I utilize Sydney in carrying my shelter, that's probably going to be the only thing that she carries. I'm kind of on the thinking that I would like to do should probably drop the weight unless it's worth having. Yeah, Jefferson, that's why there are going to be a few things that I would like to try to modernize. Now, even when it comes to the dog packs, we're going to make our own dog packs. And we're going to do canvas packs, so let's put that on our list too. Alright, so we've got our canvas backpack that we're going to make. And this will probably have padded leather shoulder straps. We're not going to put a sternum strap on it. We're not going to put a waist strap on it because I want to keep it traditional. If they needed a sternum strap back then, it was literally a small length of rope square knotted together. So the dog pack. Alright, so for our shelter, we're going to be doing a wedge tent. That was just what a huge majority of them carried off into the wilderness, was the wedge tent. I'm kind of on the thinking that I would like to do that out of green canvas, a dark green canvas material. It would be a little bit heavier, but with me being as small as I am, I could shrink that down in size. I wouldn't have to be as large as the traditional tents that they carried out with them. Which the traditional wedge tent was a 6x8 canvas tent. I could go 3x7. So let's put that on here. A 3x7 wedge tent. And when I'm sitting, I'm about 34 inches tall. 30 to 34 inches tall. So let's go with a 40-inch peak height. I think that sounds good. Now this will be frameless. Every time we go out into the woods, we will have to set up the frame for it, which, I mean, that's just lash and pulls together. 2 bipods at each end with a ridgeline. Let's see. We can probably. There's no probably. We're developing this together. So in making a tinderbox, and I would like to kind of stick with the Hudson's Bay idea where it was a little. We probably won't use copper or brass. Unless I can find a copper or brass, then we will. But we're going to start off with some kind of tin. Probably not an Altoids tin. I'd like something a little bit bigger. And we'll just cut a hole in the top and we will glue in our own magnifying glass. The Hudson's Bay tinderbox has a magnifying glass built into the lid of it. Okay, so we're going to need to do a tinderbox with a magnifying lid. Like I said earlier, a lot of them didn't necessarily carry compasses. They were knowledgeable enough, and even most guys today are knowledgeable enough to use the sun for direction. That's not something I've ever had a problem with, and I've got a fairly good sense of direction. I'm usually really good at figuring out which way is my north, south, east, and west, no matter where I'm at. It's just something I've always had a knack for. We're going to need to make our own. Let's see, do we want to go as far as to make our own, like, clothing for this? And maybe not necessarily buckskin, because that would be super heavy, and if we're being completely fair and honest, my crippled self is not wearing a full buckskin suit out into the woods. Like, that's just insanely heavy for me. So, we could modernize that a little bit if we were going to go that route. And I mean, we could even substitute buckskin for, we'd still be kind of keeping with the tradition as far as wool would go. Wool and flannel. Maybe some denim in there. What do you guys think? Put together our own clothing for this project too? I do at least want to make my own jacket. We'll at least make our own, like, buckskin equivalent jacket. We're going to do a set of moccasins too. Let's do a set of moccasins. And there's actually a couple websites. I believe one of them is called Far North or something like that. If you go check out the Gray Bearded Green Beret, his YouTube channel, he did a set of DIY moccasins that he got in a kit. You may want to do a video showing how you figure out which direction is which. That's not a bad idea, Jefferson. I never even would have thought about that. Let me put that in my little black book. Do I got a pencil up here? Yeah. This is my personal book. This is where all of my YouTube ideas go. Or even not, like, really just YouTube ideas. Survival or project or DIY ideas. I put everything in this little black book. We are, oh, okay. As I'm flipping through the pages of this, I'm going to make a little bit of an announcement here. We are going to, I've actually changed my mind. A while back, I said I was not going to build a survival shelter because I'm a big tarp fan. So why do I need to go through the work of building a survival shelter? Well, I can't rep the disability crowd in the woods and in the survival situations if I'm not building a shelter. So we're going to build one. But we're going to do it in a style that I've not found yet. And I got this idea from watching Steve's live stream of his bushcraft build. The cottage build, because he live streamed all of it. I'm kind of playing off of his idea a little bit. I'm not going to live stream it because I don't have the setup that he does to live stream from the woods, and I don't have my channel does not have the ability to mobile live stream yet. So we're going to do a continuous shot, uncut shelter build, and I'm going to release it in hour-long segments. I think that is going to be awesome. And now I realize that there's going to be times where I'm going to have to switch between cameras, but I'm going to find a way to have that all synced up. Like, one camera is not going to go off until the other camera is turned on and recording. I want it to be completely uncut, unedited, continuous shot. So you will see from the moment I walk out there and break ground until the moment it is finished, and every fall and every stick, every moment of epic wood processing. Unfortunately, all of the wood processing is probably going to be there. But like I said, I want to do it all uncut, unedited, in one continuous shot. And my searches on YouTube so far, I haven't found anybody that's done it. Everything has been edited, and you know, I mean, that's just how they do it. I'm not bashing on anybody. But yeah, I got my idea from watching Steve's live bushcraft build. I can't do mobile live streaming, so why not do something completely uncut and unedited? It'd basically be just like his live streams when they finally finish uploading. You've got that entire account now where he went out and did a bushcraft build, uncut and unedited. It was live. So, you know, I'll have my edit moments switching cameras, but that's going to be it. Like, I'm going to leave the rest of it just how the video comes out. Oh, that's cool, Jefferson. It takes hours, man. That is most people don't understand the work and the time that it takes to actually build a functional survival shelter. And I'm thinking it's probably because, I mean, I'm a gimp in the woods, and I don't have a dog that's capable of pulling anymore. So it is all going to be me. Like, because Stunt's too old to pull, and Sydney's hips aren't right, so I'm not going to put them through that. It's probably going to take me a full weekend to do. And releasing that in, like, hour-long segments, I think is going to be a really cool idea. Alright, so I was supposed to write something down in my little book. Who left the comment? Jefferson. A video on how I figure out which direction is which. I just have an awesome sense of direction. Boom, video done. How do I determine my compass points without a compass? Frontier, how you doing? Good to see you. Full-time dream. Glad you could stop in, man. We're doing pretty good tonight. We've got a really good base established for what exactly crawling up Cripple Mountain is going to be. What it means to me and what living on Cripple Mountain is in my interpretation. So you guys will have to go back and check that out after the live stream uploads and processes and does whatever YouTube has to do with it. But yeah, I think it's going to be... We've been cranking out some ideas tonight. Oh, I didn't turn it on. I'm watching my stream health bounce up and down. Are you guys getting any buffering? I'm getting a notification my bitrate is not working right either. $610 lower. Well, Jeff, that is why I'm reading the books that I am, so that I can try to learn what they knew back then. It's all this whole live stream series that we're going to be doing is a learning experience for everybody involved, including me. I've got a fair start to my knowledge base for what I want to do, and what the guys had to go through back then as far as getting started as in the mountain man and trapper lifestyle. But I mean, I'm only about 5 years into learning all of this, so there's still a lot of doors and books to be opened and read. So at the moment, if you guys are new to the stream, we're kind of on topic and off topic and all over the place with what's going on here. At the moment, we have been discussing the things in our Mountain Man and Free Trappers pack that we're going to be making ourselves on the live stream. As of now, we are up to my little drawing board. We're up to our canvas backpack. We're going to be doing some dog packs because I have pack dogs. I don't have mules, and we have a horse, but I can't use the horse. She's old. So we've got our pack dogs. We're going to make packs for them. We're going to make a 3-foot by 7-foot wedge tent, just like they would have carried back then. We're going to DIY our own tinder box with a magnifying glass in the lid. And in that tinder box will also be our flint and steel. You know what? Let's do a... let's forge our own steel striker. I've never done any kind of forging, so that'd be a good learning thing for everybody. We'll forge our own steel striker. We're going to make our own buckskin equivalent jacket, which will probably be a mix of canvas and flannel or canvas and wool, because buckskin is a heavy material. We are going to DIY a set of moccasins. Here's something else I want an opinion on, guys. Should we do summer and winter moccasins? Or should we just do like winter moccasins or just summer moccasins? Give me some feedback. What do you think? I'm kind of on the idea that we should do both. Summer and winter moccasins. Yeah, let's do both. Summer and winter. We're going to need to make a bedroll. Their bedrolls was usually some kind of waxed bottom or gum blanket, I believe is what they're being called lately. I've seen Coalcracker Bushcraft talk about his a lot. I'm pretty sure he calls his like a gum blanket or a gum tarp, something like that. And part of the bedroll we already have because I have my wool blanket. But we need to make some kind of waterproof shell. Whether it's just a fold over or like a canvas waxed bag that we sew together to slide our bedroll into. And I'll probably have to do a little bit of research as to which is better, oilskin or waxed. You think you caught up, Jeff? They didn't have Tyvek back then? No, I don't think so. But that is something that we could modernize. Because, I mean, a canvas shell for a bedroll would be fairly heavy compared to Tyvek. Frontier, that is a very good point that I think I left out of this entire stream up until now, was their possibles pouch. And yes, you're right, most of the time their possibles pouch was made out of some kind of leather, which was usually beaver for the time period. And another fur that was very popular for making possibles pouches was actually coyote fur. Coyote pelts made very good possibles pouches back then. You had to fast forward up to here. We will need some kind of overcoat. Well, that would go... I was going to say we need some kind of overcoat, but that would go along with the jacket equivalent. And for anybody new, I'll bring this up again. I'm not going to go through like the haversack style packs. And that's going to be a personal tailored piece of gear because I just don't... Carrying something over my shoulder like that, and most people tend to overpack a haversack anyways. That throws my balance off while I'm walking. So we're going to stick with a traditional style canvas backpack. But the possibles pouch is a good one. Buckskin blanket. Most of them actually carried wool blankets. A wool blanket with like a canvas bedroll, even back then, was kind of the way to go. Now that changed with the free trappers, because the free trappers would go out and they would mainly shoot buffalo to make blankets out of. And that was because of the heaviness and density of buffalo fur. Speaking of Huntsman, I'm surprised he ain't popped back in yet. And yeah, I'm not carrying a buffalo skin blanket because that would be just crazy. I'd have to pull a cart along with us to manage that one. I'm almost along the thinking of, for the wedge tent, part of me wants to do that out of canvas, but a part of me wants to order some kind of ripstop fabric in white. A white ripstop nylon wedge tent that we DIY'd would be pretty cool. But still do it in the traditional fashion that we would have to build our tent frame every time we go out. And this is a kit that I don't want to build and then just set off in the corner of the room and never take out. Like, I want to put this thing together and actually be able to take it out and it be practical for my use. And use in any weather conditions, not just warm weather either. Like, let's make this to last. Let's make it usable. We could probably manage to DIY some type of camp knife, because most mountain men, to some degree, had a personalized knife. And a lot of them would use stock steel and make it, stock iron and make it themselves. Yep, that's exactly right, Jeff. We're going to try to keep this as minimal as possible, because even back then, I mean, they carried a fair amount of gear, but they still carried just the minimum of what they had to have. Should we, towards the end of this project, it would take me a little bit to get the material together for it. Do you guys think we should make our own pack basket? That was also another very common piece of gear for trappers back then, was pack baskets. Yep, a lot of them did live right off the land. They only carried a couple pounds of wheat flour as far as food went. After that, it was foraging and hunting, or whatever they caught on their trap line. Most of them would just eat the beaver tail instead of the whole beaver. I mean, the beaver tail was considered a delicacy. So we will DIY our own camp knife. So we'll have to do a sheath for that as well. We could actually do that like a River Traders style knife. A River Trader style knife would be cool. Now, let me dig it out and I'll actually show you guys. I'm pretty sure I have it in here. I don't think it's downstairs. Nope, it is in here. That's my kayak pack. So this is the patch knife that I actually ordered. This is, so far, the only things I've ordered for this project, because everything else I have on hand so far has been this knife and the high tensile thread. So here's the sheath. It's a little Red Deer patch knife, just a little cheapo. And it is not a file knife either. Like, this is just made to look like this. This is a fairly soft Pakistani steel. And I know that it's a Pakistani steel because when I got it, it said Pakistan right on the spine. But I ground that off because it was ugly. So this is our little patch knife that we're going to be starting this whole project with, and what's probably going to be cutting most of the material for this project. Yeah, we're going to try to do a lot of this as minimal as we possibly can. But this has been a nice little knife carrying around. I mean, it's fits perfectly on the neck. Hangs there. It's not in the way. It's nice and light. And so far, it holds an edge fairly well. The only thing I'd like to do to this is I want to sand the scales down so that they're not this, I don't know if it's showing, but this is like an odd orange color. And I would actually like to sand these down and stain them like a green. I think that would be pretty cool. Or even just return them to like an oak look. We're going to do something to customize this knife somewhere down the road. Let me think here. We could probably DIY our own type of candle lantern too. Because most of them did carry some type of small candle lantern. And that was mainly for lighting their shelter up at night. If we are going to implement traps into this kit, and I say that because I am basing some of this off of what trappers and free trappers carried. We'll discuss traps farther down the road into the project, if that's a route that we want to go with incorporating into this. Most of the traps, well, all of the traps that I have, none of them are beaver traps. I have 110 conibears, I've got number 1, 1.5, 1 3/4, and number 2 footholds. I'm a land trapper. That's just how it works. You know what? I'm going to put it on here. We're going to go ahead and order the stuff to DIY a pack basket. Is there any do-all traps out there? You mean like any traps out there that just catch anything? Well, I've caught mink in coyote traps. So a number two trap that's been modified has a pretty good success rate at catching just about anything. Kid getting ready for bed?
Well, not yet, but I have to let the dogs out, so I was gonna ask if I can let stuff back in.
No, he can stay out there.
Okay.
I'll let him in when I come downstairs. I'm not happy with him right now.
I know.
Sorry about that, guys. So, my oldest male, while we were... Hey, Jeff Jackson says hi. Hi, Jeff. We went outside before I started the live stream to put the birds away for the night, and Stunt decided that he was going to get up on the counter in the food that needed to get tossed out and rip it all off the counter. Stunt is a very vocal dog. So when I walked in the house and I noticed the mess on the floor and I said, "Who did this?" It's not him being aggressive. It's not him being defensive or anything like that. It's what he does when you catch him doing something he shouldn't be. And it's not in any way a malicious act. I walked in, I saw the mess. He was the only dog in the house at the time. I said, "Why did you do this?" And he started growling. So he's been tied up outside since 6:30. Yeah, I'll take care of that in a little bit. We're going to be shutting this down before too much longer anyways, because we've been going for almost 2.5 hours. Yeah, Jeff. Bad dogs. Bad dogs get tied up outside. It's just the best way that I've come to handle it. It works for me. It works for him. He gets the idea. He'll be good for about a month before he screws up again. In all honesty, though, I wish it would have rained on him. Like, after the mess that I had to pick up off the kitchen floor, I wish it would have rained on him. Oh. He'll learn one way or another. He's as stubborn as I am. That's why he's my dog. Alright, guys. We've got a very good base of things that we're going to start making on these streams. As I said in the beginning, we're going to be doing... We're not going to be doing these on Thursday nights. I was just a little anxious to kick this series off. We're going to be doing the Living on Cripple Mountain live streams Tuesday nights. 6 or 7 o'clock. We'll figure that out by next Tuesday. I'm probably going to be starting them at 6 o'clock because it's going to be DIY. So we're going to be making all of this stuff on the live streams. You guys are going to see it step by step. You're going to see the learning process that comes with it. You're going to see the mistakes I make that come with it. All of that. So, yeah. We're going to alternate every other week. We're going to do 1 week crawling, living on Cripple Mountain. And then we're going to do the next week Gear Room live stream. Back and forth. So, that's how it's going to work. That's what we're going to do. We got a lot of projects to get started on with this. And I'm excited. So, I think it's going to be really cool to get going. Exactly. You don't learn from successes, you learn from failures. Alright, guys. I'm going to shut this down now. So, thanks to everybody who has stopped in and has watched this. And I'm excited to see y'all back in the future when we get this stuff rolling out. Like I said, next Tuesday we'll do a Gear Room live stream. And then the week after that, we'll probably do the Wedge Tent first. I think we're going to do the shelter first so that we can at least get out. I don't want to do the live streams all from in here. I want to do the live streams from outside. Thanks, Jefferson. Have a good night, man. So yeah, we'll do the shelter first so that we can get outside and do these live streams. I've got nice landscapes out in my yard that we can do these at, that I'm still within reach of my Wi-Fi. So we'll do the shelter, then we'll probably move on to the backpack. the dog packs, and then tackling the individual components from there. So yeah, thanks for stopping in, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure you hit that thumbs up on your way out. I will have tomorrow's video posted up about 8 a.m. It's easier for me to post videos in the morning than it is for me to post them up in the evening. And tomorrow's video will be my solo trip at Clendenning out of the kayak. Well, Jefferson, have you seen the pictures of my backyard? I mean, I've got the swamp over the hill. We've got the horse pasture and the hayfield in the back. I can stream pointed directly at the woods for that kind of landscape. If I decide that I just want to do a live stream from the front porch, we can do a live stream from the front porch, because even my front porch is pretty cool. My house is all cedar shake sided, so my house is basically a cabin that's been upgraded to look more like a house. So we're going to have some pretty cool opportunities for like streaming backgrounds that are not going to be green screened. I'm not going to mess with a green screen. Like, there's no point in that. Just make stuff look real. Make it real, not make it look real. Alright, guys. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down now after I've said it like 4 times. Thanks for coming in. You guys, everybody have a good night. Oh, I think I just hit the wrong button here. There we go. Have a good one, everybody. Hey, Mark, sorry you missed out, man.